Hello, and welcome to POMA Does, a podcast produced by the Pennsylvania Osteopathic Medical Association. We provide a voice for osteopathic medicine and share insights on issues important to osteopathic physicians, residents, and students, as well as those who embrace the osteopathic philosophy. POMA's mission is to promote the distinctive philosophy and practice of osteopathic medicine for our patients, our members, and the communities we serve. Thanks for tuning in.
Hello and welcome to POMA Does. I'm Dr. Kathryn Graham, an osteopathic physician practicing in Du Bois. Previously was doing infectious disease and now working as a hospitalist. Today we're talking about ticks and tick-borne diseases, including the types of ticks we're seeing in Pennsylvania. Diseases that they carry, what to do if you find a tick, and steps to protect yourself. Joining me is Dr. Nicole Chinnici, Laboratory Director from the Dr. Jane Huffman Wildlife Genetics Institute, home of the Pennsylvania Tick Research Lab at East Stroudsburg University. Dr. Chinnici has 10 years of experience conducting and overseeing tick testing and research. Nicole, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me today.
To start, what are you seeing when it comes to ticks in Pennsylvania?
Great question. We can talk a lot about ticks and tick-borne pathogens in PA. There's several different ticks in PA, and I think some of those related to what we see in human populations is important. Our most common ticks that most people will know about is the black-legged deer tick. The black-legged deer tick is very small, size of a poppy seed for the nymph-life stage, and the adults are about the size of a sesame seed. They're the most common ones. With our research and individuals submitting ticks from the public via our website, ticklab.org, for free testing for Pennsylvania residents, we see that 78% of those exposures are the black-legged deer tick, and that is the one that's going to carry and transmit Lyme disease. That is our most common tick in Pennsylvania. After that is the American dog tick. It's much larger in size. The dog ticks are active usually in spring and summer months. We're seeing an increase in geographical expansion of the Asian longhorn tick. The Asian longhorn tick is a tick that was first discovered in New Jersey in 2017. Then we documented it for the first time in 2018 in Pennsylvania. It was mainly associated with exposures with livestock, but with this tick, it's a fancy word called parthenogenic, so it will reproduce without mating with a mate. And with that being said, they tend to increase their population size quite frequently, so now they're starting to seek out other hosts. We're starting to see them attaching to people and domestic animals more frequently. Actually is now our third most common tick that we reported this year with tick exposures. Following the Asian longhorn tick is the Lone Star tick in Pennsylvania, more common in the southern tier of the state and mostly in like the southeastern portion of the state that borders Delaware and New Jersey area. With our surveillance efforts, we try to evaluate changes in range expansion of ticks. So that's one thing that we're continuously monitoring. We are seeing like the Asian longhorn tick expansion. We're monitoring the Lone Star tick expansion, but the black-legged tick continues to be our most common that we're seeing.
Interesting. Are ticks something that Pennsylvanians should be thinking about primarily during the warmer months, or is there cold month involvement becoming more of a year-round concern?
Yeah, so ticks are a year-round concern. That's a big myth. Individuals think that it's just springtime or summertime that we have to prevent tick bites. The fall is another peak season, especially for the black-legged deer ticks. They'll seek hosts out in the fall. We have another tick species called the winter tick in Pennsylvania. So the winter tick is out year-round, but does love the winter weather. It is more associated with wildlife populations, but there can be exposure to humans as well, especially hunters. But tick populations will always be active in our state when temperatures are above freezing. So our population will remain active usually into January until we get some of those deep cold weather. If we have a significant snowfall, that will reduce activity. But once those temperatures emerge above freezing and individuals start to recreate outside, tick exposures will increase. We've even seen tick exposures occurring on pets and people when there still is some snow, but the snow is melting in different areas and there's some ground cover coming through and some snow cover. Individuals have increased exposures during those times as well. So just because there's snow cover doesn't always mean you have no risk. Pennsylvania pretty much year round. You want to practice tick prevention, especially with pets going outside during the winter months, but mainly the peak seasons. I would say the most common seasons where exposures are happening most frequently are going to be occurring March through about December when that first cold temperature happens.
You just rattled off a whole bunch of the greatest concern for human health.
Yeah, so the black-legged tick is going to be the greatest concern, the deer tick, and we call it deer tick. So its name is the black-legged tick, but just for clarification for the public, a lot lot of people used to reference it as a deer tick. As scientists, we try to steer away from that because deer are not technically associated with the spread of most of the pathogens that we see these ticks carrying. So we don't want individuals to think and assume that it's the deer that are associated with these pathogens that ticks are acquiring from the environment. So it's really the black-legged tick. So that's going to be our most common tick that we had talked about with exposures in Pennsylvania, and it's going to be our most medical concern and veterinarian concern. It carries Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, Powassan virus, tick-borne relapsing fevers. There's some Ehrlichias that it can carry. So there's several different tick-borne pathogens. In our state with the adult ticks, over half of them are going to be infected with at least a single pathogen, and about 10% of them are going to be co-infected. So they are actually capable of carrying more than one tick-borne pathogen, and it can complicate your symptoms, complicate your diagnosis, as well as treatment. Not all tick-borne pathogens can be treated the same way. They're not all bacterial. There's some protozoal infections and some viral infections that they can transmit as well. But the black-legged deer tick right now is our most medical concern. After that, the Lone Star tick and Asian longhorn tick are going to be the second most. The Asian longhorn tick, it's newer in the United States, and it's expanding its geographical range like we had talked about, and it's capable of picking up pathogens that the black-legged deer tick could transmit. It's from Asia, and it has pathogens that it transmits in those continents that are similar. So it's something we're monitoring and making sure as they expand their range and start to explore various new hosts that they're not acquiring these pathogens and then maintaining them through their life stage. So that's of concern. And then the Lone Star tick, as it emerges, the Lone Star tick's the one it's been really hot in the media about alpha-gal syndrome. It's the one that's most commonly referenced for alpha-gal syndrome. So that's association with individuals acquiring a red meat allergy following the bite of a Lone Star tick. Other tick species possibly have that potential to give you alpha-gal syndrome. It's a reaction to the saliva. It's person dependent like any other allergy. So once you're exposed to a tick bite, you have the possibility of being exposed to acquiring that alpha-gal syndrome later down the line. So that's another tick. And they also, the Lone Star tick, we've documented heartland virus in Pennsylvania back in 2022 from a Lone Star tick. So they have other viruses and pathogens that they can acquire and transmit. So that's another concern that we have in our state.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. And Lyme disease gets most of the attention from these ticks, but what other tick-borne diseases should physicians and the public be aware of?
Lyme disease is pretty well established in tick populations and across the landscape, especially in endemic areas, which Pennsylvania is endemic for Lyme disease. The other pathogens that are starting to emerge and become endemic and essentially become established within both the reservoir and tick populations is anaplasmosis. It's a white blood cell infection, bacterial infection. That's going to be our next common one. Babesiosis caused by a protozoal infection, very similar to like malaria. The parasites will infect red blood cells of an individual, cause symptoms related to malaria-like symptoms with being anemic, difficulties breathing, things like that. And then we have viruses like Powassan virus circulating. Powassan virus, while it's rare, about 1% of ticks will carry it. It can cause neurological encephalitis-like symptoms. A lot of times it will go asymptomatic and healthy individuals will be okay. But those that do become symptomatic usually causes hospitalization and it can be fatal.
Well, I guess let me ask this question first. Walk us through what someone should do when they discover an attached tick.
So it's really important when you see an attached tick is to remove it correctly. I know there's a lot of social media buzz and or things you can find online that are not the most accurate way to remove a tick. Things such as suffocating it, adding petroleum jelly, burning the tick, things like that where the tick will easily back out. It seems like a good method because it's backing out on its own, but ultimately we don't recommend that because that could cause the tick to regurgitate stomach contents. So essentially it would increase risk of potential pathogens to transmit during that process. So the best way to remove a tick if it's attached to you is using a fine point tweezer, grabbing at the base of the mouth parts and pulling straight up and out.
What symptoms following a tick bite should prompt someone to contact their healthcare provider?
Sure. So as soon as you possibly were exposed to a tick bite, once you remove it correctly, I would record the date at which you've had that tick bite. That's important because you want to evaluate changes in symptoms. So those symptoms could be anywhere from being just fatigued, some brain fog, fever, chills, headache, your typical hallmark symptoms of your body's immune system responding to an organism. Those are the symptoms that you're going to want to keep an eye out for. And a lot of times individuals will quote unquote refer to it as like the springtime flu. So if you're getting symptoms of these illnesses sometime around in the spring or summertime following a tick bite, you want to talk to your physician about about possible exposure to a tick-borne pathogen. But once you remove that tick, if you save it in a Ziploc bag, Pennsylvania residents do get free tick testing via ticklab.org with our institution at East Stroudsburg University. And we could test that tick for the most common pathogens to see if you've been exposed.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And I would certainly direct any clinicians to the most recent updated guidelines for treatment of Lyme disease or other tick-borne illnesses found at idsa.org. But thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of POMA Does. Be sure to subscribe to POMA Does wherever you listen to your podcasts, and tell your friends and colleagues to tune in. Learn more about osteopathic medicine and POMA on our webpage, www.poma.org, and join the conversation on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Or email us at poma@poma.org. We'd love to hear from you. Join us next time for another edition of POMA Does.